I will shortly leave the job
and offer my resignation.
That I am resigning.
I am sorry.
Let's be honest. The state of politics in the UK is a complete mess. I mean, scandals come and go, apologies are made, and nothing ever changes. I think a lot of people are probably wondering how we ended up here. Why the UK politics is so shit. And so I thought I'd do a video just talking about the history of it. Let's recap over the last 20 or so, 25 years and see how we got here. I want to go all the way back to Tony Blair. I feel like that was the last sort of time the UK had some stability. And I believe that although it ended badly, there was a few good things that Tony Blair did. He introduced national minimum wage, and he also brokered the Good Friday Agreement and brought peace to Northern Ireland. But obviously, the glaring Iraq War was his legacy.
On Tuesday night, I gave the order for British forces to take part in military action in Iraq.
Eventually, because of that, he resigned. That brought in Gordon Brown around 2007, right before the financial crisis. And he wasn't really a great leader. He did get us through that, but he wasn't the leader the UK wanted. He didn't last very long, I think 3 years. He resigned too.
My intention to tender my resignation to the Queen.
Next comes in David Cameron, the first leader of the Conservative Party to get in for a while. Quite young, arguably quite a good leader. And he was the last Prime Minister we had that served a full term. Now, that was during a coalition, so I don't know if that counts.
But however much pride we can take in that enormous advance, we have to accept that we fell short of an overall majority.
It's because the last leader we had who served the full term that wasn't in a coalition was Tony Blair. It's 25 years ago. And then when he won the election again, he promised a referendum, and unfortunately that's what David Cameron will be known for, is losing the Brexit referendum. After David Cameron lost the referendum, he had to resign too. And the Conservative Party chose Theresa May to be the next Prime Minister. She wasn't able to negotiate the Brexit agreements with the EU, and her party lost confidence in her. Eventually, she resigned as well. So you can start to see a pattern of instability here. So we then had Boris Johnson.
I will take personal responsibility for the change I want to see. Never mind the backstop, the buck stops here.
He was a very popular Prime Minister when he first came in. Then we had COVID to deal with, and one could argue that he dealt with COVID reasonably well, and personally as well. The UK did. I think the UK was on par with pretty much every other country. The other good thing Boris did was he finalised the Brexit agreements. However, Boris's tenure was riddled with scandals. There were scandals within his party, there was sex scandals.
An undignified exit, Neil Parish quitting after he admitted he had watched porn on his phone in the House of Commons.
There was cronyism, and then finally there was Partygate.
I want to apologise. I know that millions of people across this country have made extraordinary sacrifices over the last 18 months.
Eventually, after the inquiry, found that it was just a complete shit show of double standards. They were partying whilst they were telling everybody else they couldn't see their loved ones in hospital whilst they were dying.
Because the event was described in an emailed invitation as socially distanced drinks to enjoy the warm weather.
So, of course, he had to resign as well. And then, after this, we had Liz Truss.
As the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
I campaigned as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative.
Probably will go down in history as the worst Prime Minister ever. Probably. Let me know in the comments if there is a worse Prime Minister than her. She's definitely going to go down as the shortest serving Prime Minister so far. Imagine if she was in power for much longer. So when she came into power, they did a mini budget which caused the pound to collapse, the markets to go into turmoil.
Now, the British pound has fallen to its lowest level ever against the US dollar.
It was the definition of a shit show. It was terrible. Luckily, it was such a horrendous reaction from the markets that it forced her and it forced her party to get her to resign. But imagine if she had not or got away with that, or it wasn't as bad as that, and she remained in power. Think of the damage she could have done. After Liz Truss, we had Rishi Sunak.
And I have been elected as leader of my party and your Prime Minister.
I think what happened with Rishi Sunak was he knew that there was no chance of the Conservatives winning a general election. And I think this is what caused him to basically give up. I mean, he could argue that during his time as Prime Minister, he brought down inflation, but I don't think he can claim the credit for that. I think inflation was coming down anyway. I think he gave up. And if he knew that Keir Starmer wasn't really that popular and that there probably was a small chance that he could have won, then I think he would have tried harder. But he didn't. I don't think he tried at all, really. I think that he thought there was no chance that they would win. He was someone that is from a wealthy family. He's rich. He doesn't relate to the people. He tried, but ultimately the Conservatives were not going to get in. Keir Starmer, who did win the general election, knew this and basically went in realizing, well, knowing he didn't need a plan, he didn't need to do anything. He just needed to not mess it up. And that meant that if he didn't do that, Labour would win. He would become Prime Minister. Right now we have Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. Now, before I get onto Keir Starmer, I want to look back at all the Prime Ministers and all that instability, and imagine if we had a live running vote throughout each of their stints as Prime Ministers, what would have happened? Well, there's a good chance that we probably would have had Tony Blair perhaps not go into Iraq, or maybe resign sooner. Gordon Brown perhaps probably would have tried harder. I think we would have got resignations quicker, which is probably better. You know, there's a chance that Boris Johnson may have realised he was more popular than he thought. He didn't need to resign, perhaps. We don't know. We won't know. He might still be in power. If we had a live running vote, we might not have had Liz Truss at all, because the Conservative Party members chose between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, and they obviously thought that Liz Truss was more likely a better candidate to win the general election over Rishi Sunak. But the public may have felt differently, and the Conservative members would have seen that if there was a live vote continuously running from the public, and maybe we wouldn't have had Liz Truss. Maybe we would have had Rishi Sunak. So it's interesting to think about what could have happened and how things would have been different. But we can't change that now. So right now we have Keir Starmer, and even though he won the general election, I think it's safe to say that he is massively unpopular.
Must be the most unpopular Prime Minister ever.
So, but that's the best we can do. And he believes he's popular. He believes he is, he won by a landslide. He believes I really do think he thinks, the country loves him. And I don't think he realizes quite how unpopular he is. And he's making decisions thinking that that's what the public wants. And many of them are filled with controversy, are quite clearly not what the public wants. And you see that. But there's no definitive way to really show that. There's protests, but they get ignored. There's polls, but they get challenged. So we need something else. We need something that will make politicians heroes, that bring everyone together. And the only thing that really does that currently is an election. But we can't wait 5 years every time we want to be heard by politicians. And then even then we have to choose between, candidates we don't really like. So yeah, I think protests are good. So, I think that people should still do that, but they are very easy to ignore by politicians. Politicians see protests all the time and they will just ignore them. They'll just think it's a small minority and they will continue. That happened recently with the farmers' protest. It just got ignored, nothing changed. The only thing that will change is if they see large numbers of the population liking something that they do or disliking something that they do, and really feel that that's going to have an impact on them winning the next election, like a really tangible impact. I think if that was the case, I think that politicians would definitely behave differently, try harder. They would make decisions closer to what the public want. And if the public wants something that the politician doesn't believe in, the politician will have to work harder to actually persuade the public, which is what we want them to do. Right now, they don't do that. Right now, they just make a decision, it goes ahead. Us, the public, we just sit here watching like mugs and then being displeased. And most of us don't have the time to, express our anger on X or go to a protest, and do something about it. Everyone is too busy. So this is the reason why we created a way for people to be able to do something easily. So we created an app that meant that you could vote on politicians live, 24/7, all the time. And you should change your vote based off what they do and what they don't do. You might like them one day, hate them the next day. That's how it's supposed to do. That's how the stock market companies get feedback on whether they're doing a good job. People buy their shares when they like them, they sell the shares when they're not doing a good job, and they get feedback. And politicians need that. We need that in politics. We need to be able to say to the politicians, I don't like what you just did, or this is a great decision. I like that, and I'm going to vote you up. And from that, politicians will be able to actually make decisions closer to what the public wants. I think that's the closest we can get to direct democracy. It's a bit of a hybrid between our current form of representative democracy to direct democracy. And it's simple. It's just an app. Everyone can download it, everybody has a phone, and everyone can see what's happening. And it's free. That's something that we're doing to do our part to change politics, to make it better, to bring it into the future. It's crazy that it's still this old system that we have that hasn't changed for hundreds of years. This is something that I think that the public definitely needs. I hope you like it. I hope you download it. I hope it helps. And yeah, this is a good recap of how we got here and why the state of UK politics is a complete shit show. And hopefully we can change that, or at least improve it somewhat. Thank you for listening. I hope you can subscribe, like, comment below if you agree with me or if you disagree with me. I'm not hating on the UK. I live in the UK. I love the country. And it's because I love the country is why we're doing what we're doing. So we want to make it better. And I think the worst part of the country is the politics. And we think that we can improve it with this app. And we hope you like it. Check it out.